Hey, Chandler Bolt here, and joining me today is Phil M. Jones. Phil is a keynote speaker, a sales savant, my words, not his, and the author of multiple books, including his international bestseller, Exactly What to Say. He's sold over 750,000 copies of his books and helped thousands make conversations count through his books, speeches, trainings. He's done over 2,500 speeches. The guy's super talented. Today, we're going to be talking about how to use sales skills to sell more books. We're going to talk about, he's got experience doing hybrid publishing, doing self-publishing, doing traditional publishing. So we're going to talk about kind of pros and cons of each. And then also how he sold over 750,000 copies of his book. So I'm super excited for this. Phil, welcome.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah. So for starters, I mean, you've got a bunch of books now. It seems like books are at the core of your speaking business and at the core of your business as a whole. Why books? Why is it something that you prioritize and kind of put at the center of what you do?
I wouldn't even say they're the center of what I do. They're the sprinkles on the top of what I do that allow me to do more of what I do.
Interesting.
So I'm a speaker that writes, or a trainer that writes, more so than a writer that speaks. And what my books have allowed me to be able to do is to develop authority into wider angles, because the quantity of different books and publications I've had create thought leadership. And what they've also been is tip of arrow to pierce into new markets because of the specificity that exists in some of my titles too. So I enjoy books because it turns a thing that's not into a thing into a thing.
Yeah.
And when we live in this informational age where, there's opinions everywhere, there is content galore that is available in every possible medium that somebody could look to be able to find it in, a crystallized moment in time is a book. Like, it existed on that day. It was real. You can date stamp it as you were there first. There is less of this plagiarism of ideas based on timeline. And it takes something that otherwise people aren't prepared to pay for and turns it into something that everybody's prepared to pay for, with the other plus point of, well, you become micro famous from it.
That's great. I always call a book a silent salesman, which kind of aligns with, I think, what you're saying is it's the tip of the spear to go into a marketplace and teach a methodology or an ideology. I want to get into, you self-publish, you've hybrid published, you've traditionally published, and Exactly What to Say is kind of a hybrid published book. Yeah. And we were talking about this before the interview, you retain all the rights. So how do you decide, with all these books, how do you decide when to self-publish, when to hybrid publish, when to traditionally publish?
I wouldn't even go as far to say as I decided. Some stuff is, what choice do you make at the time that you're making it, as opposed to it being hugely pre-calculated. So my first book, a book called Toolbox, I self-published because I didn't have any other options. I didn't know there were any other options. I didn't even know at the time that you could self-publish until you could self-publish. So I self-published. And I think there is an important part in everybody's life that before you can expect somebody else to back you, that you should back yourself. And everybody has to go through a period of self-publishing, whether that's a self-published book or a self-published blog or a self-published Instagram account or a self-published LinkedIn profile. In some way, shape, or form, is you have to prove that you've not only got the chops to be able to make something make sense on paper, but somebody wants to read it. So one way or another, you've got to back yourself first. But then steps in the, how do I want to commercialize this? And that's where you start to get more strategic. So I tell a story about Exactly What to Say and how that came to light. Is I first wrote a book called Magic Words. That was a self-published book. That was my second book. And that came to light because back in around 2008, 2009, I was in a mastermind group with some other speakers, and we were talking about books and publishing and how you needed to get a publisher and an agent and all that kind of stuff. And me and my big mouth said, you don't have to do all that anymore. There's tools like Lulu, I think was the one I was promoting at the time, or sharing with people at the time. You could turn a book around in like 7-10 days. There's people on Fiverr that will do a cover for you, and sharing that in 2009. And they said, really? I said, yeah, I could do a book in 7 days. And then I got caught by them calling me out on it. So I took the challenge. And what I did is I took some material from a training workshop I delivered previously that was 17 sequences of magic words to help non-salespeople sell more effectively. And I took what was a 2-page PDF and I blew it up into a book, and I put a cover on it and a foreword and a closing statement on it. And 7 days later, we put it out into the world, launched it on Lulu, put it out on KDP, and did a free promotion on it on KDP Select when you could back then. And like 3 weeks in, we had 120,000 downloads for free.
Wow. And this was exactly what to say, or this was a different one?
This was Magic Words.
Got it.
And Magic Words was not a book. It was a pamphlet in a book cover. And then I used that as an ebook giveaway. And then I used it to be able to support workshops and trainings, and it existed and it was well reviewed, and people knew me for Magic Words from speeches and trainings, etc. And then when I decided that I was moving geographically, my primary base from the UK to the US, I thought I need to do a book. And then instead of me thinking that I need to do a new book full of new ideas, I thought, well, why don't I just write the book I should have wrote? And I took Magic Words that was already a runaway success and a proven concept. And I took what really was a book proposal, which was what Magic Words was, but it was a book. And I wrote the real book, which was exactly what to say is. And the reason Exactly What to Say became Exactly What to Say and wasn't called Magic Words is because when I went to just relabel it Magic Words, there was already a book in the US called Magic Words by a guy called Tim David. And he's a real magician. So I thought, well, I'm not going to try and claim that name or that space as mine. So we retitled to Exactly What to Say mid-process. And I didn't want to sell what I knew was one of my greatest hits to a traditional publisher and pick up an advance, and I'm pretty glad I didn't. I wanted to own it, but I did want the benefits of attached to working with a publishing partner that could help me navigate the distribution space, that could give me access to quality editors, that could help me with pagination, that could ensure that I could still do things like Hudson placements and get some international reach and things like that too. So the hybrid model was my favorite, and I just backed myself again. I wrote, some 5-figure checks out to people, and I put my trust in myself in them to produce a book that was professional enough to meet what I was trying to do with the brand, and we brought that to market in 2017, and we're now pushing 1 million copies around the world, 29 different languages, and that book alone has generated me personal wealth in excess of $1 million.
That's amazing. I got so many follow-up questions. So you said you didn't want to kind of give away the proven winner to a publisher. Yeah. Why? And then you also said, I'm glad I did it. So why at the time was that something that you consciously said, hey, I don't want to do that? And then why now are you glad that you did it?
Well, I'm glad I went hybrid because I have a genuine partnership, like a genuine one. Is here we are 4 years past launch, and I can still text them at page 2 and have a meaningful conversation about what are we doing next? How do we make this keep running? What is version 2.0? Or even how do we use that success story to be able to further their business or further mine? It's like a legit real partnership. I'm glad I did that. My fear of any form of rights and IP deal, particularly in our space when we are experts and thought leaders and know a lot about a lot, you take what is your best of work, your signature moves, your time-tested methodology, the thing you've poured your life and soul into, and turn it into a commodity on somebody else's shelf. Now, there would be a time that I would do this differently from a traditional publisher's point of view. And I think it would be that when they write a checkout that is so big that it's a liability. I think my dad said this to me once, is like, if you owe the bank like $50,000, then that's your problem. If you owe the bank $50 million, then that's their problem. Right?
Interesting.
And it's that, what is the size of investment that they are making in you? If you take a $20,000 advance from a book point of view, then this is on you to make it successful. And if it is successful, you don't become successful. If you take a 6-figure advance or a 7-figure advance and you get to those kind of levels, well, now all of a sudden you might have some different levels of partnership. But what I love about the fact that I own all of my IP into my book, Exactly What to Say, is how I can be creative in its distribution. Quite simply, I can afford to give it away if I want to.
Yeah.
Whereas if I take my traditionally published books, I can't buy them myself for much cheaper than an average consumer can buy one copy, even if I'm buying 500. Therefore, I can't really afford to make marketing decisions on it where the book is an asset that I gift. I just can't.
Yes.
My hands are tied.
Yes.
Therefore, I feel like it's not my book.
Yeah.
Right? It's
You're
not my
leasing a
book.
book that the publisher owns. Yeah.
Correct. And there's times that that's the right thing to be able to do too. Like, it's not one's right or one's wrong.
Yeah.
It's what is your book intended to do? And I would tread very, very, very carefully if you are packaging some of your legacy work into the format of a book, and then you're going to remove your freedom and flexibility with that asset to use as you see fit over the next decade.
And so let's unpack that just a little bit, because there's a lot of other questions I want to ask, but I think this will be really helpful for folks. How does that work? So you own all the IP, but you're working with a hybrid publisher to expand your distribution. Like, what are the mechanics of that? Like, how do you make money? How do they make money? What does that look like?
They make money simply in the fact that they take a percentage of revenue back through my trade distribution.
Got it.
So when PGW, who hold fulfillment for the likes of Amazon, make an order of 6,000 copies of the book, that order comes in, the handling costs come out, then my hybrid publisher takes a skim out of my royalty.
Got it.
So that part is their primary revenue source. They have other ancillary add-ons, fee for service, etc., that is beneficial at their end. But my Kindle revenues, my print on demand revenues, my translation rights are 80% mine, 20% theirs. Like the lion's share of revenue comes in through me. But what I have is I have access to partners that I would have never had if I was out there all on my own.
Got it. So they get a direct cut of all book sales, but more weighted.
Not all book sales.
Got it.
Not all book sales.
So which sales are off limits?
Only my trade distribution. So my bulk sales are all mine.
Yep.
I print, 20,000 copies of the book and I hold them in a warehouse. And when I sell those are mine. And I pay the printer direct and I pay the storage fees direct.
Got it. And so, and can you define trade sales for people? Is that when someone's buying through Amazon or buying through Hudson bookstores, or like kind of traditional?
Everybody from Amazon through to every other bookstore that exists on the planet in some way comes through trade, where there is a distribution handler that holds stock and then fulfills that all out to those other areas. And even if it was Little Jimmy's bookstore that doesn't stock your book, that through the ISBN then draws it down, that'll come out of trade distribution somewhere. And if I look at my trade distribution royalty, I see Amazon, I see like 5-6 other people that then play a tenth of Amazon. And then I see 100 people that are like 1 unit and a quarter and things like that. So it's everything comes through that channel. But my digital sales are mine. My Audible royalties are mine. My bulk is mine. My custom editions is all mine. My international translations, my licensing deals that come, my video books that I'm now negotiating are all mine.
And that's all 100% you.
Yes.
Got it. Cool. Okay. This is great. And I don't mean to bog down here, but I think this is like really helpful for people on the hybrid publishing side of things. One last question specific to hybrid publishing. How did you decide? I mean, there's a lot of hybrid publishers. I think it's kind of, in my opinion, the Wild West. Like, it can just really run the gamut. Either you're paying a ton of money up front and they're taking no royalty, or you're paying a little bit, and they're taking a big, like, it seems like you have a pretty solid deal. There's the fee for service, and then there's a minority component based on value added. How did you find them? How did you decide?
I think there's two parts of this. Is it's not hard to create a short list. It's a pretty transparent space. There's some proven track records. You can actually physically buy a copy of the work of somebody you're thinking of working with. You can speak to those authors. You can reach out to people that they've worked with in the past. Like it's not hard to get trusted reputation based on proven track record in this space. So you can do some due diligence to get to a short list. What I then did with my short list is I really wanted to look for people who took a long-term view. So anybody that was in that space that we can get you straight to bestseller, or the anybody that was making promises that were short-sighted that I felt were 12 weeks long, they started to move towards the no list. And you know, I'm looking at my books as being a 20-year business plan. So I want somebody who I feel is going to be committed to this to a long-term journey too. And that came through due diligence, through discussion. But the one kicker for me is the publishing partner that I choose to work with for Exactly What to Say had done or was in the process of doing exactly what I wanted to do with a guy called Michael Bungay-Stanier, who wrote The Coaching Habit. So quick conversation with MBS, conversation with this particular partner, and I felt like we're on the same page. And what I also felt was true just on that human element of getting into this is I could push back. Like I come from a sales and marketing background. I don't need people from a publishing background to tell me how to sales and marketing, how to sell and market books, right? It is that there was acceptance of who knows what and how can we get scrappy in the part in the middle to be able to make a success of this, and the success felt shared. And that was what I was looking for in a partner, was that we could deal with the messy middle together without ego and accept the imperfections that would come through that process. Whereas many others are like book factories. It's like, this is what you're going to do. And then once it's out in the world, it's like, good luck, my friend. This felt different from the get-go, and I needed that.
That's great. I want to kind of back up just a little bit. So it started as a pamphlet that you wrote in 7 days, magic words. You said, hey, I need to write a book. I'm, moving stateside. I need this to be like kind of a calling card for my business. You wrote the book, you hybrid published, then fast forward. Okay. 750,000 copies sold. You said approaching 1 million copies sold. How did you do it? Like once you published it, what were the things that sold the most copies of the book?
I get asked this question a lot. And mostly how you do it is one book at a time. And I think people forget that, right? They think just all of a sudden that you hit this crest of the wave and that you did this one thing that resulted in 1 million copies being sold. It hasn't been that for me, for sure. What's also interesting is year 2 outsold year 1. Which is very unusual.
Yeah.
And we're in year 4 and we're tracking flat with year 3. And this is what I wanted. My goal was to create like an evergreen bestseller that would, like if it was the top 40 charts, if it was the music business, I want to be number 41 and I want to be there forever. Like that was the route that I was going for with this book. And there's only one thing that sells books. Like that really sells books. Forget launch strategies and bonuses and things to get it out into the world. There's one thing that sells books, and the things that sells books is somebody reading your book. And then before they finish their day, telling somebody else that they should read it too. That is it. Somebody reading your book, and then before they finish their day, telling somebody else they should read that book too. And you think about the books that you've read. Not many came from you browsing Amazon aimlessly to try and find something worthy of reading, or you walking through a bookstore. Most books that, particularly in the personal development or business space, come from somebody you respect saying you should read this book. So all of your marketing effort should be based on getting people to say you should read this book. But it also means you should write a book that results in people reading it. And given that many books don't get read, you're not going to create the outcome of, I just read this, you should read it too. And that's why most books don't hit momentum past their first 12 weeks of launch, because they don't get read. So counterintuitively, Exactly What to Say is shorter than almost every other business book on the planet. It is also the most listened to audiobook of 2018. The most listened to. Not the most sold, the most listened to. Which is an interesting stat in my mind as well, is like people have reread this on audiobook on multiple occasions. So a thought I would have for many authors is, does form follow function? Like, what do you want somebody to do with this book? Not store it on a bookshelf, What do you want them to do with it? Do you want it to sit on their desk? Do you want them to carry it in their bag on a plane? Do you want them to reread it 5 times over? Is this something that they have as a memoir and they enjoy looking at it daily? Is this something that when they finish it, they give it to a friend? But like if you're not thinking about its purpose in the world, you might miss its chance to create a ripple. And if it doesn't ripple, you don't hit the virality of a book that is worth talking about. You just sell to your first circle. People tell you you wrote a good book. You did write a good book. A good book exists, but it hits a period. It hits a full stop.
Yeah.
And it doesn't keep running because you can only make it go to one level. You need something that can get to the second and the third level and then perpetually go. And that means people have got to read it.
And so how do you do that? If the bottleneck is first getting people to read the book and then secondly, getting people to share the book, how do you said focus your marketing on kind of on those two things? How, like anything that you do to get people who purchase it to read it or to get people who read it to intentionally share it with others?
Well, I mean, I have a copy here. One of the things I do to get people to read it is I make it pretty easy to read it, right? There's a reward in the fact that it doesn't take long to finish a page and it's easy to get to the next one and it's easy to get to the next one. And before I know it, I read a book. I read a whole book today. You realize like how much of an Instagrammable moment that is for somebody. It's like, I've finished a book today. Like I've already done my book of the month and it's the first of the month. Like that is something that increases readability. The other thing is to think about like, why to go paperback first? Well, it's easy to travel with. When do people read business and personal development books most? It's in like a semi-dead time. It's like an accompaniment to being able to do something else you're already doing. So put it in a format that might support that. If this was, 4 times the size and carried weight, you'd be like, I'll leave that at home. I'll read that when I'm back. And then you don't. So those things all lead towards readability. Other things that lead towards readability is friction. And what I mean by that is from the title to the content that exists through the book, it has to create almost that teaser element of what a soap opera does, of saying, I can't wait till the next episode. I can't wait till the next season. Look at the title of my book. It's called Exactly What to Say. I'm certain if this book was called Magic Words, it would have sold a fraction of the quantity that it has gone on to sell. You can't write a book that tells me exactly what to say. You certainly can't write a short book that tells me exactly what to say. I mean, how possibly could this tell me exactly what to say? Let me read it and find out. So there's curiosity laced into the book from the title, which increases readership.
Yeah.
Whereas what many people want to do is they want to give away the secret on the cover.
Yeah.
So those things impact it. When it comes to marketing, here's a simple way in which I think, and a mistake that many people make for book launch. At book launch, what people do is they encourage thousands of people to buy the book, and then they encourage those people to tell people that they should buy the book. They never talk about their results or experience of reading the book. So all of this effort and energy gets created, everybody gets excited, and nobody knows what for. Whereas if somebody shares something they learned from a book, now I might want to read it.
That's great.
And I think this is a miss in launch. Like the most important part of a book launch is not launch day. It's 2 weeks after launch day when you loop back around to the people that have consumed the book and get them to share the thing that the book has taught them they didn't know previously. Like that's the day that matters. Launch day as well, of course. And what happens is the support you get in your early days gets wasted. Because everybody did what you asked. I bought the book, I took the photo, I shared the selfie. Right, all of that was done. And I'm not saying that doesn't need to happen, but if you don't get the second bounce of what did the book teach me and what could it teach you too, then the noise is the wrong kind of noise.
Yeah. That's great. I want to build on this. I want to kind of go through a lightning round. I've got a few different questions I want to ask, just some related, some unrelated. Magic words and sales skills. I mean, I know this is like a big topic, big question, but when you talk about magic words, how does that apply to authors and sales skills? And because it's kind of what you said earlier. It's like I know sales and marketing, and the publisher knows publishing. And so for authors who don't know sales and marketing as well, and let's obviously we just talked about the marketing, focus on the sales side of things. Like, what are some of those magic words, or how can authors use sales skills to sell more books?
Okay. First things first, salespeople, born or made? Born or made? What do you think?
My take,
Mm-hmm.
I think made.
Well, what does a 3-year-old do when they want something?
They sell the parent on getting it.
Right? They ask for the things they want in their life. They are relentless about those asks, and they learn ways to be able to ask for things in ways that get them what they need. And success in sales is merely asking in the right way. That's all it really is asking in the right way. And the biggest reasons that most people fail to get the success that they want in life is because they just don't ask. Your success is in direct correlation to the quantity of quality asks that you make in your life. If you want to have success with a book launch, you're going to have to ask a lot of people to do a lot of things for you. So you need to have those skills that are in place. Here's what happens. A classic thing that happens to every author is you launch a book and people say, like, anything I can do to help? And you say, yeah, like whatever you think of, I'm super grateful. Like anything you think you could do to help, that'd be brilliant. Thanks. And the poor person on the other end is like, I wanted to help, but I don't know how to help. So they don't help. Or they post a selfie, hit me in the book, buy my friend's book. Go on, please. And nothing happens because they don't have the ability to be able to ask. What if you could just ask a simple question? Hey, who's somebody you know that I don't know that might have an interest in learning how to be a better manager, or who might have an interest in? Would you send them a copy of the book for me? You see how that one simple ask might start a conversation that could create more of an impact than the person just lamely promoting it or writing a review that says, my best friend wrote a book and he's really nice and we went to school together and 5 stars. It needs to be real, and you got to force that conversation. And it is important to get your language right, like to get on podcasts, to be able to create actions of what somebody's going to do on it, is to lace in story. Like my book has 26 sequences of magic words. I've shared none of them. But I'm pretty sure anybody listening in right now has a belief and understanding that I might be able to help them with some language that could help them shift some more books, but I haven't told them anything that's in the book. What do you think some people might be thinking right now?
I need to buy the book.
I should probably grab that book.
Yeah.
So if you want to have success as an author, understand that being an author is not the hard part. Being a marketer of what you authored is the real work.
For sure.
Having the ability to sell people on helping you to market your book is the hard part.
Yeah. Hey, let's switch gears. This is great, Phil. Let's talk, because we never talked about this on the podcast. So I want to dive into this real quick, and then open loop. I want to come back to the Phil M. Jones and the specificity behind that. But first, Audible Originals. This is something you've done well. I was on your website. You've got a whole kind of sales page specific to the Audible Original. You've done multiple of them. Why and how? Like how, first off, how did you negotiate one of those deals or line up one of the Audible Original deals? And why is that something that you've prioritized for your book?
Okay. So I'm a big believer in the fact that success leaves clues, and your platform is created in a personal brand space by getting your pegs in a board, right? Is the more little pegs you have in a board of achievements that you've done, the more that your resume continually evolves with key assets, the more that you can continually scale a personal brand. Is, you don't want to be, I wrote a great book in 1996 and then live off that forever. You've got to keep doing things. And, I was looking at people who were a few steps ahead of me in the race. And one of the guys that I stumbled across is a guy who now become a friend, a guy called Neil Pasricha. And Neil had secured an Audible Original. And I thought that was interesting. I was super passionate about the fact that audio is a great medium for the consumption of information, because unlike video, you didn't necessarily have to give it your full attention. It could accompany. I also was an author on a lot of content around the spoken word. I'm like, dang, this would make sense to be able to do this. And I thought, how do I orchestrate something that I have no right to be able to do and make it real? So what I did is I got on a plane, I flew to Toronto, and I took Neil for dinner, and I asked him how he went about getting his Audible original. I shared with him 3 loose ideas of something I could be. He said, you need to speak to my buddy, the editor at Audible Originals, that was greenlighting new productions. I said, that'd be cool. He said, I said, where's he based? He said, he's based in New York City. I said, cool, I'm in New York City. We can probably make that work. So I got a drink with this guy. I pitched an idea. But I waited my time to pitch the idea. I waited the time to pitch my idea when Exactly What to Say was in the top 20 of all Audible books. I waited my time to pitch the guy that when Audible was there. And what I had was a window of opportunity that was a version of, well, whatever you like. But actually it wasn't. I stumbled across another problem. Audible had just commissioned a deal with a theater in New York City, where they were doing these live Audible originals, and they hadn't really got their head around what their programming was going to be. So I thought, of all the things that I could pitch them, if I could pitch them something that was recorded live, that was actually delivered in a theater, I helped fix a problem that they had, which they got a theater and they don't know what to do with it. So I gave them an idea that brought all these things together, and they were like, we should do that. And I got to live out a lifelong dream where I performed off Broadway to a live audience content that now exists forever. Right? I did a one-man show for 8 hours for a live audience that became my Audible original, How to Persuade and Get Paid. But what I really wanted there was I didn't want an online course. I just didn't want an online course. I also didn't want to deliver my one-day sales training workshop that had built my business, that I was delivering to 12 people at a time, 20 people at a time, selling tickets, and grew towards that was still getting inquiries for. So I thought, what if I could bottle it in an audio program that would support everything else? Guess what? How to Persuade and Get Paid, my Audible original, is probably one of my proudest professional achievements to date. And it's a marketing tactic to sell more copies of Exactly What to Say.
And has it done that?
Yeah. And it's been a commercial success in its own right.
Yeah.
Because now what you do is you get 2 + 2 = 5.
Yeah.
Look, what happens is I get an interview about Exactly What to Say. We talk about how to persuade and get paid.
Yeah.
If you listen to How to Persuade and Get Paid, you learn about exactly what to say.
Yeah. And the economics, do people purchase How to Persuade and Get Paid? Do they get that for free on Audible? Can you walk through how that works? And then how do you get paid? Do you get paid just on the book sales? Was it an upfront? Do you get based on downloads?
How to Persuade and Get Paid was a lump sum upfront, like a traditional publishing deal, with bonuses based at thresholds. So when we hit thresholds, there's another lump. When we hit a threshold, there's another lump. But decent number at the front, and we're about to hit the first milestone.
Nice. And it drives sales on the other side.
Yeah, there's a kudos thing that's attached to it too, and I have the poster from the theater on my wall over here. I'm like, that is fun. Yeah, it's fun.
That's awesome.
Go on.
Why have you focused so much on Audible sales? Because this Audible original has worked so well. You said the most listened to audiobook, I think in 2018. Like, why has that been such a priority for you?
I was picking up 90 grand checks a quarter.
And so were your Audible royalties higher than any other format? Yeah.
Yeah. And what else happened is Audible had a period of time where they were paying a thing called a bounty, where they had bounties that were running that if somebody joined Audible as a result of your book, you picked up like a $25 or a $50 spiff on that one transaction. And corporations around the world were telling every one of their employees that you need to listen to Exactly What to Say. So I was getting these by the 100 of people signing up to Audible through my book. Also breaking random algorithms too at their end, where because of how short it was, I mean, people were using a credit on Audible to buy a book that's 74 minutes long that you could buy for $5.99.
which is
Like for anybody who understands the Audible model, that's like paying 3 times over the price for the book to use a credit. But also they were then listening to it on average 2.6 times. How many books on Audible do you think have got a 2.6 average listen? Most have a 0.6 listen if they're doing well.
Yeah. That's great.
So, and then that feeds the algorithm on like Audible's end, right? Is that then they put it in front of more people. The other thing that then drives book sales is conflicting and contrasting reviews. I have more 1-star reviews than most authors I know. I also have more 5-star reviews than most authors I know. But the 1-star reviews create friction again. If you hear about a book and you look at it and it's full of 5-star reviews, then where's the catch? If the 1-star reviews are shown and it's got a 4.3 average, I'm going to make my own mind up. How do I make my own mind up? I got to read it.
Buy the book. That's great. It's the Perry Marshall 80/20 sales and marketing, right? It's the 3-star review book that has no 3-star reviews. I mean, obviously yours is much higher than that, but just the same concept, right? Of the contrast is what creates conflict, and the conflict is what creates movement to purchase and to read.
Catch something in my language here that's interesting. You mentioned buy the book. I mentioned read the book. And I think many people focus on getting people to buy the book, and it's the wrong finish line. The finish line should always be read the book. If the finish line is buy the book, expect to succeed for a bit and then fail, and fail fast. If you move your success metric to read the book, then you might run a longer distance.
That's great. I love that. Hey, we're running right up at time here, Phil. Final question I got to ask. Well, actually, two final questions. Why Phil M. Jones and not Phil Jones? I know you said you've been very intentional about that.
When I started building my personal brand, philjones.com didn't exist. And Phil Jones was a soccer player that is just going through a transfer to Manchester United that was some of the hottest press on the planet. So I knew I couldn't win any Google attention, any name recognition attention as Phil Jones. Yet as Phil M. Jones, I'm in open water. So I could own every asset there. I could build out a brand that would be known. People start to conjure up, what could the M stand for? The truth is, it is just my middle initial, yet people think that there is more to it than just that. But what it's allowed me to be able to do is not fully intentionally build a stronger personal brand, because there's just another added and what else as an identifier. And it's been remarkably helpful. Like even in my speeches, when I'm customizing content for a client, the M in my logo is typically my standard orange. What we now do is we change the M in my logo to the corporate Pantone color of whoever I'm speaking for.
Oh, cool.
So it's just a little, another little piece of fun.
Last couple questions for you, Phil. Knowing what you know now, what would you say to Phil M. Jones from years ago, pre-book one, or all the other Phil M. Jones out there that are thinking about writing and publishing their first book?
I'm not big on mistakes and wishing things were different. What would I say though is remember that you can write more than one book. And perhaps that might empower you to put less into your first one, but less but better. If you're wondering what should go into your first book, it's the best thing you've got. The best thing you've got and nothing else. But give yourself permission that this is going to go well and you can write more. So that would be my first thing. What else is advice? Is be careful who you listen to advice from.
Mm-hmm.
If they haven't done it,
yes.
If they haven't got a proven track record, if they don't know what they're talking about for real, be careful what you'll listen to. Because there's an army of people out there that will tell you that, you can't make money from a book. There's an army of people out there that will tell you that they can jump you to bestseller in no time and that this is going to make you a bisquillionaire, and they've never done it. They might have some metrics and some screenshots to prove it, but they've never really done it. And know that the author community and the people that are attached to the author community that give a damn, they're some of the most giving people on the planet. So don't be afraid to ask them for proper advice. And I mean their experience. See what you can learn from them. And I think you might be surprised at just how much they'll give you for nothing. Because this is an industry where every one of your competitors is also your colleague. And I think everybody who's in this would rather help their colleagues, knowing that actually people don't only buy one book. So although they might be your competitors, they can also be your companions, and people can buy both. And that's a unique industry to win in. And I think, embrace that industry. And the only way that you get to be able to access that industry is to become an author, which means you got to write something, you got to publish it, and then you get the access to being, hey, I'm an author, you're an author too. How do we get to learn from each other?
For sure. That's so great. Phil, this has been amazing, man. This has been a lot of fun. Where can people go to find out more about you, to check out your stuff and to buy your books?
Well, firstly, if you go to Google and you remember I'm Phil M. Jones as opposed to just Phil Jones, you should find the right one. Come find the website. It's probably the best place to start, philmjones.com. You can spin out from there to any of the social networks. If you are active on social, Instagram and LinkedIn is where you find me most active. So if there's something I've shared today that's insightful that you want to learn more about, if you want to chat about stuff, DM me on Insta. If you just want to connect and follow along to what I might be sharing or what might be of interest to you, then ping me a connection request on LinkedIn and we can maybe cross paths there.
Awesome. Phil, thanks so much, man.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.